And we're going to get into, in this talk, how Ayurveda comes in and helps us take care of what practices we can bring in, what some of our alternatives are to hormone replacement therapy, if that's not the route we want to go, or maybe even what complementary therapies can we bring in on our own around our hormone replacement therapy so that the hormone replacement therapy is truly a stopgap measure and not something that we're relying on, right, to get us into balance, but something that we're using to support us as we change our approach to life, as we change our lifestyle, as we bring in more supportive habits and supportive approaches to how we are living. So I'm kind of picking up where we left off, wanted to go back to this slide around some of these perimenopause symptoms that we're looking for that are common to many of us who are entering perimenopause, or maybe we're post-menopause and still experiencing some of these things. So there's brain fog and confused thinking, and this is a more kapha type symptom, but there could be some vata as well, depending upon the individual and how the symptom is presenting itself. Aches and pains, any kind of pain is typically associated with vata dosha. Stress, irritability, depression, these are all typical vata symptoms. And this is significant because in Ayurveda, we can look at and identify the qualities of a symptom and then know what practices, what dietary changes and shifts to bring in for the individual, what herbs to bring in for the individual. So I just wanted to kind of go through this list and reiterate that, hey, these are all symptoms that, whether they're associated with menopause or just you're having a symptom like this, sort of unassociated with hormonal imbalance, these are things that Ayurveda works with every day, right? We identify the symptom and then we work with it and we get to the root cause of what's bringing it into your life. So all of these have a um, a doshic association and a uh, a, a, an antidote. So speaking of brain fog and having trouble bringing up terms sometimes, I can relate to that. So Ayurvedic wisdom. We bring in the wisdom of Ayurveda and we identify, again, those qualities of our symptoms, and then we bring in the treatment plan. So, Ayurveda, we talked about the elements, we talked about the doshas in our first talk, and I wanted to just touch on the 10 pairs of opposite qualities here. So, I'm not going to go into all of them, it's a whole other lecture, but the 10 pairs of opposite qualities are sort of the framework around identifying what we need to bring in order to design an effective treatment plan for someone, in order to treat your symptoms, and not just your symptoms, but the root cause of your symptoms. So we're looking at opposite qualities of symptoms like hot and cold, right? So we've all experienced a fever, right? Or just being hot in general, right? If it's a hot day or we're exercising, we know what being hot feels like, or if we're having a hot flash. And cold, we know what coldness feels like, right? If our hands and feet are always cold, we always have to bring a sweater wherever we go. It's sort of like in an individual, if we were looking at your prakruti, remember your original constitution, how you came into the world. Some people are more hot natured, they have more pitta dosha, and some people are colder natured, they have more vata dosha. And some people are kind of cool. They're in the middle. Their skin tends to be a little cooler to the touch, and they're not really affected by temperature fluctuations. And those individuals are more kapha, right? So they're cool, but they're not affected as much by extremes, right? Whereas pitta would be very greatly affected by hot weather, and then vata would be greatly affected by cold weather. Kapha, not so much. Okay. And then we have dry and moist. And it's easy to look at sort of our body, right? So we can look at skin. And that way we've all experienced dry skin or maybe oily skin. And light and heavy. That's a good one to look at around digestion, maybe even the mind, or just a general sort of body experience, right? Sometimes we feel really light and sometimes we feel quite heavy. And stable and mobile. So stable, we feel very grounded. We're usually have sort of a clarity of mind, and mobile, we're sort of all over the place. right? Feeling a little unstable. The mind is moving greatly. The nervous system maybe is upregulated. And then dull and sharp. So that can be around the mind, that can be around speech, that might be around pain, a dull pain versus a sharp stabbing pain. So we use these qualities to define or describe the symptoms we're having, just like pain, right? Is it dull or is it sharp? There are differences, and we want to look at those differences to bring in opposite qualities to treat those kinds of symptoms. So just because someone's in pain doesn't mean we're going to approach that the same way in every individual, right? We want to look at the qualities of that pain. Is it moving? Is it sharp? Is it dull? And then we know how to treat it, right? So there's no sort of one size fits all or blanket concept approach for everyone. Ayurveda really looks at the individual. And so Vata dosha, that remember that's air and ether, so it's the lightest of the doshas. It's always cold and dry and light and unstable, right? It moves. Pitta, fire and a little water to contain it. It's always hot, usually moist, light, and mobile. And I say usually because when the pitta has been burning and unbalanced, and when we say unbalanced, we mean it's high. There's too much of it. So when something is unbalanced, a dosha is unbalanced, or an element is unbalanced, it's too high. So when pitta has been going on at that high level or that unbalanced state for a long time, it usually burns up all of the water, all of the moisture. So pitta can eventually dry things out and start to look like vata. And then kapha, earth and water, that's the heaviest of the doshas. It's cool, it's moist, it's heavy, it's stable. So pitta comes in, if it's out of balance, it will always make things hot. But I want you to remember that pitta can't exist without fire, can't exist without air. So vata is always the partner in crime for pitta. Okay, you can't have that fire without air. So pitta gets going, and then right, we start to do more, and we start to achieve and get competitive, and then all of a sudden the vata comes in and starts to blow the fans of pitta, or starts to rather fan the flames of pitta, and that fire really gets going, the air really gets going, and then we start to do more, and we start to do it faster, right? And so it starts to accumulate and accumulate, but eventually that air will blow the fire out and will be in a burnout state, right? So anytime you have pitta, remember there's vata pushing it. Vata's coming along. Vata on its own, it just makes things cold and dry. Kapha on its own makes things heavy and dull. And sometimes it adds moisture. It can add swelling usually when it's out of balance. Okay, can you have more than one of these doshas out of balance? Absolutely. Remember the example that I just gave you with pitta, there's always vata coming in. So usually when there's pitta out of balance, we want to look at vata as well. Can you have all three out of balance? Yeah, you can. And it's a little trickier to treat things. But I always tell people when in doubt, look at vata because vata is going to fan the flames of pitta or blow it out or make it really unstable, make it go high and then low and then high and then low. And vata will dry things out or destabilize things to the extent that kapha wants to come in and try to ground and stabilize them. So usually pitta and kapha are coming in as an effect or because of vata imbalance. Okay. And we have a very vata aggravated society. We're always trying to do more and multitask and do it with more quote efficiency or faster, right? And so we're just piling things on our plates all the time. And then we get overwhelmed with this, which is a classic vata symptom. And depending on whether you have more pitta, heat, or kapha, stability and heaviness, one of those doshas might start to accumulate as well when we start to do more, when we start to bring in more vata. So let's talk about vata. How do we balance vata? I think most of us can relate to this dryness or coldness. And if not, definitely definitely the worry, the anxiety, the overwhelm that comes with vata. Okay. So the classic digestive symptoms that come in with vata are gas, bloating, constipation, or alternating constipation and diarrhea. Right. So vata sort of fans the flames of your digestive fire and either heats it up and you immediately have to eliminate, okay, diarrhea, Or elimination is one of the ways the body releases heat. Or you're constipated, right? It kind of blows the flame out. Or you have that diarrhea episode, you're completely dehydrated, and then you're constipated for a few days, and then it starts all over again, right? So that's a classic vata symptom, that variability, the air just blowing things wherever it wants. And then menstrually or hormone wise, we're getting irregular periods when there's a lot of vata. And there's usually a lot of pain, and the menses itself is quite scanty and dry. Okay. So what do? We bring in opposite qualities, right? So vata is dry and cold and unstable. So we're going to bring in warmth and moisture and nourishment and stability. So we want to do that through food. We're thinking our grain cereals, porridges, right? For our breakfast, like oatmeal, cream of wheat, if you can do gluten, things that are really substantial and warm and comforting, the things we would gravitate toward in the winter, right? Fall and winter, because those seasons are dry and cold and tend to be unstable. There's a lot of change and, a lot of death in nature. Which, right, then it's going to be completely transformed in the spring. But in the meantime, things are quite unstable out there. And so think of that going on in your body when there's a lot of vata. So we really want to bring in the comfort. So we're bringing in heavier foods and like nuts and seeds and spices and ghee. Ghee is clarified butter that has had the casein or the lactose removed from it, the milk solids removed from it. It's just the pure essence of oil and fat from cow's milk. It's considered a really beautiful elixir in Ayurveda, and it helps heal the gut lining because of the butyric acid that it contains. So again, we're thinking like grain porridge. So have some oatmeal. I really like bulgur wheat. I'm kind of on a bulgur wheat kick right now. It makes things gives it a little more texture, and it cooks really fast. I soak it overnight with my oats, or I'll just have it on its own. Sometimes I'll mix it with oats. Sometimes I'll have it on its own. And it's beautiful for regulating the bowels, your elimination habits. Oats are a natural nervine sedative. So I have a lot of clients who, after they eat their oatmeal in the morning, they're like, it's so soothing. I feel like I've got this buffer, this barrier, this armor against the world, in my digestive system. It really settles things. I love to add nuts and seeds, like soaked chia seeds, ground flaxseed. These are all going to be really helpful for regulating vata irregular elimination patterns. And then also just for feeding the microbiome and getting some really good omega 3s and healthy fats in there to combat the dryness that is typically systemic. If you've got dry skin, you can assume your digestive system is probably pretty dry too. And so this feeds the microbiome, creates that slippery surface that all those good bacteria create so things can move down and through us and not get stuck. And then we're thinking like soups, stews, curries, stir fries for lunch and dinner, right? So things that are warm and hearty. We're not talking about you know, trying to get in a bunch of like unhealthy food or really like quote fattening food, right? These are all things that are full of really good quality fats, proteins, carbohydrates, from our vegetables, from our grains, nuts, seeds, meats, and oils. And then we're going to avoid the qualities that vata already is. So we're not going to have iced or raw or cold things. And I know a lot of people are attached to their cold drinks, their iced beverages, their frozen things. Ayurveda says these are things that are just going to create more coldness, more dryness, and more instability in you. And think about it: if you're drinking a bunch of cold water, it's almost freezing, right? And your body temperature needs to be close to around 97 degrees, not 32 degrees. So you put that inside of yourself, and your body, your metabolism has to ramp up to get it to back to body temp. And then, right, it kind of goes back down again. And then you add more ice water or more ice, whatever, or frozen, your ice cream or yogurt or whatever it is that's cold. And it has to do that again and again and again and again, right? So you're constantly going up and down and up and down. And Vata's already doing this. Vata's already up and down, like the air, like the wind. So try to wean yourself off of the it's kind of an addictive quality almost, right? I think we're also just used to having something cold. And so if you can just get yourself used to room temp, that's a start. And then you'll start to feel yourself gravitating toward warmer things, even in the summer. If you really are truly a Vata natured person, came into the world that way, and you get in balance, you're going to start craving the things that keep you in balance versus the things that keep you out of balance. The exception to raw would be like seasonal fruit. You can have that as a snack between meals. Fruit should be consumed on its own. It's very fast moving through the digestive system. And when we combine it with other foods, it tends to kind of sit around and ferment. So, fruit we want to eat either like cooked into our oatmeal, like having some berries or some apples cooked into the oatmeal. Go with seasonal fruit. So, whatever's seasonal, whatever's ripe. And our microbiome would have developed to digest those kinds of foods at that time of year. So we want to go with seasonal produce. But we just, for vata, we want to cook it. Or if it's fruit, we'll have it alone, or we'll cook it into, our morning grain porridge or something like that. And then we want to avoid, again, the things that are already vata, like the dry foods. So things that have had all their moisture removed, popcorn, toast, crackers, chips. Okay, so these are the things that vata likes because they're crunchy, usually. And that can be sort of like a stress reliever, right? When we can crunch on things and chew on things, but these are things that are just going to keep you dry, okay, and keep that vata going. So we want to avoid these things. And if we're going to have them, just add some moisture. Like I tell people, have popcorn maybe once or twice a week as a treat. Just slather it with ghee. Add a bunch of spices to it. Make sure that it's really easily digestible and it's not going to dry you out too much, right? Don't do it often. And then we want healthy fats in every meal. So we've got ghee, olive oil, avocado oil, sesame oil, nuts, fish, seeds, even ripe avocado. Try to get all of these things into your diet. Okay, add these things to your meals to really bump up the fat content. Um, Fat is not the enemy. Fat is our friend. It helps us produce really healthy cholesterol and helps nourish and hydrate all of our tissues. It helps with metabolic processes. It builds myelin sheath, which is what our nervous system is made of, right? So we want these things especially for people who are experiencing a lot of worry, anxiety, overwhelm, dryness, upregulation of the nervous system. And we want to avoid skipping meals. So we don't want to leave you empty, right? Because vata is air and ether. Ether is space. It's good to allow your food to digest. So we don't necessarily want to graze either, right? We want to eat meals, or you can even do small meals more frequently, but wait for yourself to get hungry again before you eat. If you're eating before you're hungry, it means your food hasn't moved through all of its digestive processes. So one of my teachers used to say, it's like having or starting to cook rice, and then halfway through the process, we dump a bunch of raw rice on top. So now you're going to end up with burnt rice, well cooked rice, and then raw rice, right? And so that's kind of what's happening. We have these three stages in our digestive system: stomach, small intestines, lower intestines. Once food is moved into the lower intestinal area and it's getting worked on in that stage, it's usually when we get hungry. And it's usually about 3 hours, depending on the size of the meal, 3 hours after we've eaten. And so, or when we get hungry again. And a lot of Vata people are just sort of nervously grazing all day, right? It's just sort of a self-soothing mechanism to just always have something, to chew on or to taste. And so this is just, you're in a constant state of confusion in the digestive system. And this is a large contributor to the gas and the bloating and the constipation and the discomfort in the digestive system. So if we could just have a meal or snack and then wait until we're hungry again. This can be a problem or difficult for Vata because Vata is very creative and loves change. So they're always moving on always on the go, and they tend to ignore their bodily functions. And that's a problem. So we want Vata to slow down and tune in and say, when's the last time I ate? Or what does being hungry actually feel like? Right? So have your meal, stop, and then wait until you're hungry. And sometimes for Vata, they're so far removed from, so many of us are so far removed from our natural bodily functions and its needs. We've ignored them for so long that it kind of it kind of shuts down on us. It's really sad, actually. It just gives up. It doesn't give us the signals anymore. So we might need to tune into other signals like irritability, headache, lightheadedness, right? A blood sugar drop. Um, we might need to tune into some of those symptoms that come in much later than an actual hunger pang. So know that it's okay. Just tune into whatever you can, and then you'll be able to start to witness the signs a little earlier and earlier and earlier. And then you'll get into a rhythm and give yourself time to do this. It doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen in a week. Sometimes it takes months. Ayurveda is a practice that you bring in for a lifetime. So know that you're just going to keep getting better and better and better at these things over the years. It's a really profound and beautiful process. We want to try to avoid caffeine. Caffeine is like vata in a cup, right? It just wires us up and upregulates the nervous system, and it masks our tiredness. It masks our body's need for whatever it's asking us for. So I say 1 cup of coffee in the morning. It's a beautiful ritual, or some tea, fine. And then cut yourself off, right? Try to bring in herbal teas or just flavored water. Flavored, I mean like add some lemon, add some lime, add some ginger, add some berries, something that gives it something, just something interesting if you need that. But try to limit your caffeine, especially after lunch, because that's going to disrupt your sleep. And then we want to slow down in general, stop multitasking gradually. You don't have to do this overnight, and tune into your body through movement like slow flow yoga, hiking out in nature, walking outside. Vata people, they want to run, they want to go fast, they want to do all the things. And we got to keep it more moderate. Okay. Circulate, move your body. Yes, absolutely. But it's very easy for Vata to get depleted and to get injured. So we want to be really more careful, more mindful about this, especially as we age, because Vata, remember from our first talk, Vata accumulates as we age. So if you're already Vata, you're just going to get more of it. We want to create a really soothing wind down routine before bedtime. Vata needs the most sleep, but they're the most prone to insomnia. So we're going to give them more time to stay in bed, more time maybe to sleep in when they need it, and maybe give them a more like a bigger buffer, a bigger window between getting ready for bed and actually being asleep. You're going to need more time to wind down your nervous system because it tends to be in a more upregulated state already. Okay, so journaling is really good, just like a mind dump, get it out so that when your brain wakes you up in the middle of the night, worrying about something that is so not a big deal when you think about it in the waking hours, but it's a huge deal when you're sleeping in the middle of the night for whatever reason. You can tell your brain, we already wrote that down. We already know it's fine. We can go back to sleep. So that journaling before bed, just the mind dump is really helpful. Writing down the things you're worried about or have to do the next day. You can tell your brain we've got it covered when it wakes you up in the middle of the night or tries to. And yoga nidra is a really powerful practice to use to fall asleep. I sent you guys some resources after the first talk. And if you're watching this video and you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to reach out to me and I'll send you those resources for yoga nidra. Just send me an email. But yoga nidra is also helpful when you can't fall asleep and you just need to get into a state that mimics sleep and gives your body the benefits of sleep. 20 minutes of yoga nidra is the equivalent of 1 hour of sleep on the body and the mind and the nervous system. So it's a beautiful practice to fall asleep or to help you catch up on sleep or get into a state that mimics sleep. Okay, moving on to pitta. So pitta imbalance, right? Pitta is too high. Usually looks like heat. We get hot, we get intense, right? We're very focused and driven and competitive. We get angry, or at the very least, we're just more judgmental and more critical. Remember, I mentioned pitta could also be dry if that fire has been burning up the water, the moisture in the body over a lifetime or over a long time. Burning digestion could happen, but it's not necessarily reflux. Reflux is one of those symptoms that it's actually vata because it's moving, that's air, and it's going up when it should be going down. So vata is usually more responsible for reflux than pitta. But we tend to identify it with pitta because it burns, right? Because that feels like fire because acid is coming up and burning the tissue. So it's sort of a combination, but it's really more vata. Um, Loose stools and smelly gas. Pitta typically has like a sharp odor associated with it. And remember, I said the body's way of releasing heat is through one of the ways is through elimination. One way is through expectoration, sweating. One way is through urination. So we have a couple of ways to release heat. Vata tends to hold on to heat because it's cold by nature. That's why the constipation is more associated with vata until there's right it's like been backed up and then you end up having a bowel movement and then following it with diarrhea and then you're all dried out and start over again. Well, pitta, they'll have the loose stools or the diarrhea and they'll have a bowel movement the next day, no problem, right? Because they've got a lot of fire. Things are going to keep moving. Eventually things can dry up though. um, and then pitta is going to tend to have heavier, more intense periods but not very long, possibly with some intense pain. And then we're thinking, pain, that's vata. Okay, there's the vata pushing pitta, right? So pitta is usually not alone in its crimes. We've got vata as the partner. So the highest practices to balance vata, as you can imagine, are to cool things down. So we want to eat cooler, but still nourishing and lightly seasoned foods. So whereas vata needs a lot of seasoning, from cumin and ginger, and I may not have mentioned that cumin and ginger, turmeric, fennel, basil, oregano, all the you can go Eastern or Western. Vata needs a lot of seasoning to warm things up and sort of help them break their food down, assimilate it, and form healthy tissue. They want to be careful with the really hot and spicy things, though. Okay, so like the chili peppers, cayenne, your Tabasco, your sriracha, the hot sauces, those can be too heating and drying for Vata. A little bit goes a long way for them. Um, Obviously, those are out of the question for Pitta. So we want to avoid the really hot spices for Pitta and go more mild. Pitta can usually handle even the ginger and the cumin and the cardamom, things that are a little warmer, but they're not too spicy. But when Pitta is really high, we want to go even cooler and we want to do like coriander, the seed of cilantro, right? Cilantro is the leaf, coriander is the seed. They're both very cooling. Fennel is nice and cooling and neutral. We want to go with peppermint, right? So the mint family is really nice for pitta. So we still want to get nourishing food in because pitta tends to be ungrounded. And remember, vata comes in and pushes pitta. So we're usually looking at vata with pitta as well. Um, so we want to go nourishing. We want to go with those heartier foods. Pitta has a bigger appetite as well, so they can handle that. But maybe some larger portions than Vata. Pitta is probably going to not eat a bunch of small meals throughout the day, unless Vata is really out of balance with the Pitta. Then maybe that's needed. But Pitta people typically they want to eat their 3 meals. They're not big snackers, so those bigger meals allow time to digest. Just lay off the spice, lay off the fried food, and some salads are probably fine for them. They can do some cooler raw food, whereas Vata has a hard time digesting that. We want to avoid cold and iced foods for them as well, because what I talked about it, the metabolic rebound, right? Everything gets cool, and then your body's like, oh my gosh, we got to get you back up to almost 100 degrees. That rebound, right, firing up is just too heating for them. So we want to keep things steady. Cool is usually okay, especially in the summer, like some cool room temp water. That's usually fine for them, but just we don't want to do iced really for them either. Um, and then alcohol is like fire water. So that's alcohol is like pitta in a bottle. So we want to be careful with alcohol consumption. That can be really heating and then drying over time. And it really messes with the brain and your hormones. So, ladies, if you're experiencing hot flashes, ditch the alcohol for a few weeks. And I guarantee you, if your hot flashes don't completely disappear, then they will significantly subside. Give yourself a break. It doesn't mean forever, but just take a break from alcohol and see what that can do for you. I've seen it just completely eliminate hot flashes 99% of the time. Healthy fats in every meal, still really important for pitta, especially if they're dry. Ghee is really good for pitta. Olive oil, again, avocado oil. Pitta does really well with seeds like pumpkin, sunflower, soaked chia seeds. Those are really nice. Ripe avocado, still good for pitta. They need fats too, just the healthy ones, not the fried ones. And they don't need those spicy foods. Everyone needs to avoid eating after 7 p.m., but especially Pitta, because Pitta is the night owl. They like to stay up and get things done. But Pitta also really needs cooling down and detoxing. Their liver is the liver is a Pitta fiery organ. So for Pitta people, they've got to give their liver a break and time to cool down, and that is overnight. So we want to make sure the liver can do its detoxification duties versus having to do its digestive duties. So it's doing the digestive duties all throughout the day, right? Producing bile and sort of processing all the things that are in circulation in the bloodstream. And it's recycling and shunting things where they need to go. And so overnight, we want to take out all the digestive duties that it has to do and let it detox. Okay, so let things get released into circulation and let the liver take toxins, take things that don't belong in the body, turn them into bile, store it away. And then the next time you eat some fat, it gets released as bile, helps you emulsify the fat, helps you digest it, and the toxins go down with the waste matter that moves through your digestive tract after that. So if we can finish our dinner by 7, and we have 3 hours, right, to digest our dinner before bed at 10, go to bed on basically an empty stomach, then our liver can do all of those things it needs to do overnight instead of having to um, function as a digestive organ. It can function as a detox organ. If we're staying up past 10, liver's got to function, as like an organ that has to function during the waking hours. And we really need to be asleep when the liver is doing these nightly janitorial jobs for us. And it's most active between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's when you don't need to, your mind shouldn't be active, but pitta mind, if you stay up past 10, it'll wake up and it'll get you going and you'll, get really productive and be that night owl that you like to be when you get into that competitive and intense place. But if we can train ourselves to be asleep at that time, you're going to cool yourself down, reduce your inflammation, and be such a happier person. Caffeine for them, same thing. It kind of revs them up, pushes them into that intense state. So 1 cup of coffee or, caffeinated tea in the morning is fine, but you want to cut yourself off, and especially after lunch. It would be better for you to take like a 10-minute nap than to have a cup of coffee. We want pitta, those intense people, to bring in more play, take things less seriously. They need healthy boundaries between work and play. They need more vacation time, and they're the ones who usually aren't going to take it. So we want them to cool down in their movement patterns. So swimming is great for them. Yen and restorative yoga, great for them. Walking, hiking in nature, they're going to want to push themselves and go compete in a marathon and win in their age group. But we really need them to scale back and know that they are worthy because they exist. They don't have to prove themselves. They don't have to win at everything. That's going to be a tough sell. It's going to be a really tough sell. But when they're pretty active and can take care of, the cardio on their own. Um, when they're doing purposeful movement, we want them to slow down and do these restorative, or at least balance with these restorative practices to help cool them down. And once they feel it on their bodies, they're probably going to get behind it. I know some pitta people who they only go to restorative yoga now. they do their walking, a little strength training, but if they're going to go to a yoga class, it's going to be restorative. They're sold because they know how it feels now and they know what it feels to be in balance as a pitta, right? You don't need to rev up pitta. It's always firing underneath the surface, but we want to bring in balance. So create a nice calm morning routine for Pitta. Pitta people, even as late as they stay up, they tend to, want to get up and get things done and start moving. So if we can create a morning routine that creates this sensation of balance, calm, mindfulness, where we can help them turn off their thinking and analyzing mind, which is, part of how they see the world through that critical lens and why judgment and anger start to come up for them. The mind gets too hot. So if we can bring in meditation and pranayama or breathing, these cooler practices to start their day, that's wonderful. So Vata needs a little more of a wind down at night. Pitta needs space to hold calm and presence in the morning, right? Letting go of the thinking mind because they're doing that all the time anyway. Okay, moving on to kapha. So a kapha imbalance usually looks like coolness, maybe a little clamminess, kind of some moisture happening in the skin, and a lack of motivation, some swelling, and maybe weight gain. And I'm going to talk about weight gain in a sec because I think it's really important to discuss how we view weight gain, um, and maybe how, when we're just looking at a cursory view of Ayurveda, weight gain looks like a kapha imbalance. It's earth and water, it's excess tissue. But what's causing us to gain weight? That is that's another slide that we'll get to in just a moment. So, kapha imbalance in the digestive system, nausea, heaviness after eating, slow elimination patterns. So there might be some constipation or just some slowness, stickiness, and there might be some mucus in the stool. They will have so hormonally, menses wise, they will have long periods. Okay. And there'll be swelling and bloating and breast tenderness involved. Possible mucus in the menses as well, right? So, kapha and mucus are pretty synonymous. When kapha gets out of balance, there's just more mucus production in general. So the highest practice is to balance kapha. You can imagine kapha needs to get moving and light a fire under their seat, right? So we want them to eat a light and spicy diet. So they get to eat some of those lighter, drier foods, little popcorn, quinoa, um, granola would be better for them than oatmeal. Spicy foods, they get to have the Tabasco and the sriracha and the cayenne and the jalapenos. They can do some raw food as long as there's no gas because kapha digestion tends to be low. So if the raw food's causing gas, we're going to limit that or pull back. But they can do some raw food, and then cooked greens. So cooked bitters, really nice for them. They need the bitter greens, the cruciferous vegetable family. So, like kale, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, the liver loves that. And their liver tends to be a little slower and sluggish. So, we want that to kind of purify the liver. And then those heating spices ramps up their metabolism, maybe even gets them a little sweaty. And then the really well spiced, like spicy beans, spicy lentils, that's going to be really nice for them too, because it kind of, they're light and they tend to dry up any excess secretions in the body. Pitta can do quite well with beans and lentils, as long as there's no gas. Um, and because the beans and lentils also kind of dry up any oiliness of pitta. So again, cold and iced beverages and foods, not great because kapha is already cool, right? We don't want to slow down their metabolism, and that tends to do that for kapha. For all of us, Ayurveda says that iced and cold things put out our digestive fire, right? They weaken our digestion. And then heavy, fried, sugary, fatty foods. Kapha does really well as a vegetarian. And they tend to, I say most kappas have kind of figured out that they can't overeat or they will pay the price. So true kappa people, in my experience, usually aren't overweight, interestingly enough. It's the vata and the pitta people who overdo it and then end up gaining weight for other reasons. And so we'll go over that in a sec. So we want kapha to get their healthy fats in too, especially if they're dry. Yes, you can be dry as a kapha, if you've got a little more earth than water. And so we want them to bring in ghee and olive oil, avocado and sesame oil, and a little ripe avocado is good. Fasting, kapha feels great when they fast. So Ayurveda recommends that they just eat 2 meals a day. They want to they're usually not hungry when they wake up in the morning. And so we want to wait for their Agni, their digestive fire to get going. And that's usually around like 10:30, 11 o'clock. So have their sort of brunch lunch then. That can be the largest meal of the day. And then a really early light dinner around 4 or 5 o'clock. That's it. Okay. So something really light, 4 or 5 o'clock, like maybe a little soup, maybe a little salad. 11 o'clock, that first meal, that main meal can be bigger. That's when our digestive fire is at its height because that's where the sun is in the sky, right? And we are have evolved over the millennia with the rhythms of the sun, right? We sleep when it's down and we're active when it's up. That is how our hormones have developed. We want Kapha to get moving, do things that are scary, learn something new, get out of their rut and their routine, right? Shake it up. Maybe if their joints permit, do some running. Kapha is going to be the one who you want in a hot yoga class. Pitta, for obvious reasons, we don't want Pitta in a hot yoga class. We don't want Vata in a hot yoga class because they are going to dry out and overstretch and injure themselves. So we want Kapha in those classes because we want them to get hot and sweaty and move things out of their system. So, maybe even some dancing would be great for Kapha, like some ballroom dancing or some salsa, and they get to learn a new skill. And they love connecting with people. They're they feel things very deeply. And so if you can get your Kapha friend to join a dance class with you and say, it would just be such a great thing for me if you would join me. They'll do it because they want to help you. That's Kapha. So you motivate them by asking them to help. We want Kapha to get up before the sun rises and do their light spiritual practices, right? Like meditation and pranayama and breathing and exercise. So we want to get them up a little before sunlight. They need the least amount of sleep, but they want to stay in bed the longest. So we get Kapha up really early and we lighten them up and they can carry that lightness with them throughout the day. Pitta, we want them to get up and do their spiritual practices so that things are a little cooler for them too. Okay. And then Vata gets to maybe sleep in a little bit because they are the lightest sleepers, suffer from insomnia. They might need a little extra sleep when they're out of balance. So this is the note on weight gain. Weight gain in Ayurveda is, yes, considered generally a kapha imbalance because it's extra tissue, extra earth, extra water. Sorry, guys. All right, I have a sensitive mouse. But I've rarely seen weight gain that didn't follow a vata or a vata pitta imbalance. So when we do too much, when we take on too many projects, when we're overly people pleasing, doing so much caretaking, or there's too much change happening in our lives, which could include good change and also sad change, like the big loss, of death, of losing a loved one, or, we're those pitta workaholics, we're bringing in more air or movement. And anytime we move, anytime we change, whether it's good or bad, there's something we're giving up. So there's ether, there's space, there's loss. Okay. So when we change, we increase the air element, that's movement, and we lose or give up something, and that's ether, the void, the space, the vacuum. So whenever we are moving and changing, we're increasing vata, we're increasing vata dosha. Vata is dry, light, mobile, unstable, right? And cold. So we're increasing potentially worry, fear, anxiety, and overwhelm, and that could lead to depression. And so we're increasing vata. That's why Ayurveda says the faster we move, the faster we age, right? So the more we move, the faster we move, the more vata comes in. And what happens is we age, vata accumulates. So if we bring in that vata early, we're going to age early. So if we don't allow ourselves time to adjust or even grieve from those losses, nourish ourselves, right? Bring in all these healing qualities and practices and foods. If we just maybe sort of bypass these emotions or add more to our plate and just keep distracting ourselves, the body is going to drive us to turn to comfort and nourishment, usually through food to fill that void, right? And so then weight gain comes in. It's a symptom of long-term vata or vata pitta, vata pushing pitta imbalance. Kapha is like the body saying, hey, you won't ground and slow down? I'm going to put more tissue on you and let's see if that works. And what do we know about that? It usually doesn't work, right? So we've still got all of the worry, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the workaholism, all of the things that come with Vata or Vata Pitta imbalance. And now we have extra tissue on our bodies, right? Which just makes us feel crappy. So if you're overweight, instead of doing the things that balance Vata, I'm sorry, instead of doing the things that balance Kapha, which are very heating and very destabilizing, right? It's like you're going to end up heating up your Pitta or over moving your Vata, right? So instead of focusing on the Kapha, the extra tissue, focus on what caused you to put on the excess tissue, or what's still causing you to put on the excess tissue, and reach for the comfort, which is probably still happening. Focus on that instead. That's the Vata, that's the Pitta. So we need to slow down, feel the feelings, and get into your healing routines. And typically, if Pitta does less, they will lose some weight. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. And if Vata slows down and starts to get into their rhythms and routines, they will stop reaching for the comfort food as well because they're getting nourished from all those lovely healing foods and fats and soups and stews and practices, right? That they're bringing in. They're starting to slow down and listen to their bodies. So they're like, oh, I'm hungry. I don't have to wait 8 hours and then binge on everything in my refrigerator, right? Because I haven't eaten all day. And then end up overeating and feeling, or overloading the digestive system and feeling really badly in that way too. So if you regulate the nervous system, the weight will come off, right? If we let the cortisol, the stress hormone, come down, then the weight will start to come off. We just have to give ourselves time. I want to note too that if you change too fast, what is change? Change is air. And anytime we change, we end up giving up something that's ether. So if we change, we're bringing in Vata. So we want to change gradually so that we don't stir up more Vata and more destabilization. So more mobility, right? More ungroundedness. So we don't change overnight and we don't lose weight overnight, right? In fact, the body will rebel. So we want to do things gradually, including get back to a weight that makes us feel nourished and balanced and stable and feels appropriate for our frame and our metabolism. So, the Ayurvedic guidelines for all women before, during, and after menopause are around the three pillars of life in Ayurveda, these three tenets that we want to have in balance throughout our lives. And they will shift, from phase of life to phase of life. And we need to adapt in order to stay balanced as that happens as we age. They're food, sleep, and energy management. So, food for everyone, we want to focus on fresh, right, and nourishing and seasonal food appropriate for our doshas. We want to eat that food in the correct way at the correct times and in the correct quantity. So, these guidelines for healthy eating are some of the most important things around food because 85% of our digestive issues can be solved by how we eat. Okay, that's pretty profound when you think about it. That how we eat is what's really affecting our digestive imbalance, not what we're eating. So if we can stop and eliminate distractions, sit down and chew our food, we would all have 85% fewer digestive issues. So eliminate distractions. So no TV watching, no working or reading or even listening to a podcast. Look, y'all, it truly only takes about 10 minutes to eat a meal, even if you're chewing really, really well. It's true. So just take 10 minutes, turn off everything, eat your food, and then go do what you really want to do. Okay. Kind of use it as a reward system. But if you can just eliminate everything for 10 minutes to eat a meal, you're going to be so much better off. Your brain is always prioritizing a low level of distraction over digestion. So if you're giving it more distraction, it's not going to give as much attention to your digestive system as it could be. Okay. So just 10 minutes, turn off everything, focus on your food, do really well. If you can, have some gratitude. Maybe take a deep breath in if you're into grace, or, maybe if you do some energy work, I like to do a little Reiki over my food sometimes. Um, these are really important things to calm the nervous system down so that you can get into rest and digest, that parasympathetic nervous system response versus fight or flight, right? So we let the cortisol go and start producing digestive enzymes instead. Stop when you're 75% full. This is a big one. If we would pay attention and find, it's different for everyone. It takes practice. It takes time to find where we feel satisfied, but not stuffed, and not like we're going to get hungry in an hour or 2 hours. Um, we would all find an appropriate weight or appropriate body tissue for our frame and for our metabolism. So again, this differs for everybody. There's no magic number. Ayurveda says if you can like fit your meal into your cupped hands like this, which is actually a lot of food when you look at it. Really, it's a lot of food. And if you're a smaller person and you have smaller hands, it's going to be appropriate for your frame, right? And how much tissue you have. And if you're a larger person, right? Taller, broader, have more tissue, and maybe your hands are bigger too, that's going to be appropriate for your frame, right? To feed you. So Ayurveda looks at that. And then I say just start to pay attention. If you're hungry in 3 or 4 hours, you probably ate the right amount of food. And if you're not, you may have eaten a little too much. If you're hungrier sooner, you may need to bump up your meal a little bit. So it's again trial and error, but eventually you'll start to kind of lean into, I could eat more, but I don't need it. And then things start to normalize and stabilize body tissue wise. Limit our fluids. So Ayurveda says we don't want to drink too much with our meals. It tends to dilute our digestion. And so about half a cup of fluid with meals is really important. Wait about an hour to start drinking again so that you don't restart the digestive process while your food is still trying to move from the stomach into the small intestines. We start to drink water, and the hydrochloric acid production gets going again. We restart the digestive process. So wait about an hour, set a timer if you need to start drinking water again, and that will help a lot. That will usually curb most people's pain after digestive related pain after eating, is to limit liquid, limit iced liquid, and then wait about an hour to start drinking liquid again. If you can, wait to jump right back into work. But if you need to, I understand some people only can take 10 minutes for lunch, and some people aren't even taking that. So if you can at least take your 10 minutes and focus on your food and not work, not do anything else, you're going to be so much better off. If you can wait a little bit to work, I like to just read maybe 10 pages in a book that I'm working on after lunch. It just gives me a second to digest. Maybe you can take a little stroll if you feel like you're a little heavy. That will help move things down. And then again, wait, like we talked about, to eat 3 hours between meals. Try to eat your meals at the same times every day. That will really help regulate your nervous system. It'll know what to expect, and then you'll get hungry at those times. And you'll tune into your hunger signals. Meal prep if you need to, right? Put a day of the week aside where you chop things up or prepare things and put them in containers. I know Ayurveda is not big on leftovers. We want to eat fresh food, but guess what? That's not ideal for everybody. So I say preparing your food and eating some leftovers is better than eating fast food or not eating at all. Plan your shopping trips, plan your recipes, your grocery lists every week. It's takes maybe an hour to do, on like a Sunday or something, or a day off. Just set an hour aside, see what you're going to eat. And it can be the same thing. It doesn't have to be too creative, but maybe that's a place for you to be creative, is in cooking and in food. And then bring in all the culinary herbs. These are medicinal in Ayurveda. They have a myriad of health benefits, not just on the digestive system. Cumin doesn't just work on the digestive system and reduce gas and bloating. It works on your lungs too. Basil, right? It doesn't just work on the digestive system and move things through. It works on your mind, your brain, and your nervous system as well. It helps reduce stress. Fennel. It's not just for gas and bloating. It helps with hot flashes and painful periods, that kind of, your cramps are an indication that you're having trouble releasing your menstrual fluid. And so your uterus is having to contract, and maybe you're feeling it in your lower back and your sacrum. Fennel will help move things down. So fennel is a beautiful herb for menopause and digestion. Okay, sleep. We all know sleep is important. We got to get 7 to 9 hours, y'all. We have got to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep or the equivalent through yoga nidra. Remember, I said 20 minutes of yoga nidra, 1 hour of sleep. So if you're not getting enough sleep, bring on the yoga nidra. You've got to get that evening wind down in. And if you can get an evening wind down in, this can often eliminate your nighttime hot flashes. Um, and we start to cool down and wind down. It really helps you to stay in that place instead of waking up, because the nervous system is kind of jarring you awake at 2 or 3 in the morning. You can't just expect your body to just stop and crash, right? Especially if it's been going all day long. The nervous system is still wired, even though the body is tired. So the mind will wake us up at some point. So if we can really ease into the bedtime routine and slow down, at least give yourself half an hour. I'd say Pitta people, you probably need about half an hour to wind down at least. And then Vata people, you need at least an hour. Okay, at least. So, yoga nidra or naps during the day, people who took regular naps, and that's 1 to 2 naps per week, had up to a 48% reduced risk of heart attack, stroke, and heart failure, especially men. Isn't that fascinating? So that just tells me we're not getting enough sleep as a society, right? If napping is that beneficial. So yoga nidra, I think everybody needs to do yoga nidra most days of the week, 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. We want to limit our TV and phone viewing before bed because that blue light tends to disrupt production of melatonin, which makes us sleepy. So I like to just have a TV free night once or twice, or maybe a few more times each week. And so my partner and I will just maybe, work on a novel that I like. I work on a, I read a book, he reads a book, and it's really pleasant. It's such a nice break from scrolling through all the options out there and not being able to decide on one until it's too late. And then we're watching things, until it's too late or too close to bedtime and disrupting our sleep patterns and our evening wind down rituals. So see what it feels like just to take a break, and maybe read a book or study something, do a creative project. Some people like to do beading or crafting, knitting, paint by number is actually pretty fun if you haven't checked that out. So just all kinds of things. Maybe you just go take a walk outside, sit outside in nature. Really nice to just let go of technology in the evening once or twice a week. And then that can help you sleep and get into a better pattern. Wake up early and wake up at the same time every day because that will help promote sleepiness at the same time each night. Okay, even if it means you need to take a little nap, just wake up at the same time, unless you're sick or super depleted. But try not to break that cycle. And again, it'll help you get sleepy at the right time. And hopefully that's before 10 o'clock. We want to be asleep by then so our liver can do all the detox duties overnight and then awake around 6 or 7 in the morning. Some people only need 7 hours. They really only need 7 hours. So 5 a.m. is your jam. Just make sure you're getting 7 hours. I have seen people who get 7 hours regularly. It's not working. I'd say most people need a little more than that. Okay, so just know, if you're only aiming for 7 and you're feeling like it's not cutting it, it's not cutting it. So trust that. Get some more sleep. Go to bed earlier or sleep an hour later if you can, or get some yoga nidra in regularly. And then we talked about limiting food before bedtime and alcohol as well, right? It's one of the biggest culprits of nighttime hot flashes. So if you can give yourself a break from alcohol for 2 or 3 weeks, 3 weeks, kind of the magic, 21 days, kind of the magic number. And then it's not forever. Again, you can bring it back in and see how you do, but it'll give you the ability to reset and kind of detox, allow your liver to detox and cool down. You don't need to do any special things to detox the liver necessarily. It can do it on its own. So as long as you're not bringing in, you know, um, other things, just eliminating alcohol, giving yourself a fasting window between meals, and then a fasting window between like 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., that can be enough to help the liver detox on its own. Let's see. Oops, sorry. Did I go backwards? I sure did. So the third pillar, often it's just referred to as like sex. But I would say your sexual energy is the same thing as your creative energy. They're the same types of energy. And so I'd say that your, sexual output, creative output, your work output, because for so many of us, especially if you're an entrepreneur, your work is sort of an extension of who you are or can be, right? It's sort of you're putting out there the passion that drives you, and so, or if you're caretaking or mothering, right? All of these things, these are our sexual energy, our creative energy are the same. They're intertwined, they're linked, they're really not separate. And we want to make sure that we are putting back in anything that we are outputting, right? So we're filling up our tank after we deplete it. So we want to start to think about, especially in this time of life, who who am I? What do I value? Right? What do I love to do? What fills up my tank? What do I want my life to look like? What are my gifts and talents, and how can I find a way to express those to the world? And we can bring in supportive Ayurvedic and yogic practices. So, Abhyanga, self oil massage, really beautiful practice that helps keep all layers of your tissue vital and healthy and hydrated and strong, even your bone tissue. I sent you guys a handout on Abhyanga. If you're watching this video and you don't know what I'm talking about, shoot me an email and I'll send you that about how to do self oil massage. It helps calm and ground the nervous system, which can help with perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms like hot flashes, anxiety, insomnia. It helps ground the nervous system. It helps kind of turn off our sensory stimuli, and it can help replenish our ojas. Remember, I talked about ojas in that first talk, the antidote to accelerated aging, and the light pressure that we put on the bone tissue. If we do this every day over years and years, then we start to build bone tissue because of that little bit of pressure and that stimulus. So it can help our nerve tissue, obviously our skin, because we're hydrating it. It keeps our muscle tissue toned, and it can also keep our bones stronger and our nerve tissue balanced as well. Helps move lymph as well. So it's really every layer of tissue. And then pranayama, specifically alternate nostril breathing, it can help to balance the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The right nostril affects the right side of the body, which is the more masculine, analytical, left brain, right, opposite lobe of the brain, driven part of the body, more fire energy, solar energy. We access that through the right nostril, Ayurveda and yoga says. And then the left nostril and the left side of the body are more feminine, creative, lunar, water element, and the right lobe of the brain. And so we access the more sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system through right nostril and left nostril, respectively. So when we do alternate nostril breathing, and if I didn't, I will send you guys a link to a recording on alternate nostril breathing. And again, if you're listening to the recording, you're like, I don't know what she's talking about, hit me up for that. I will email it to you. It's just me taking you through alternate nostril breathing in a guided recording, a guided breath session. So we access and we balance those two sides of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and the two lobes of the brain. And it helps calm and ground the nervous system. We do a little breath retention, and that helps tax the nervous system just enough to make it stronger. And then the lungs are where we store grief. Anytime we've got emotions coming up, any type of loss or change in life, when we access our breath and we process through the lungs, then we're able to process emotion and grief more readily, with more access, with more stability as well. So breath work is just, I can't speak highly enough about doing a daily breath work practice to help us recharge our batteries, process our emotions, and heal and revitalize the nervous system and therefore our hormones, right? It lowers the cortisol and it bumps up the feel good hormones. Meditation is a way to connect with that silence, that inner being, and that quietude, and to give ourselves a freaking break, right? So we sort of take a break from the thinking mind and try to find connection with the present moment. Use guided meditation if this is really difficult for you. Yoga Nidra is a type of meditation that can kind of get you ready for the type of meditation where you sit up and focus your mind on one thing, to try to eliminate the thoughts and distractions. So use Yoga Nidra as a form of meditation at first. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's restorative. We want to slow down, eliminate the multitasking because y'all know that multitasking is just doing many things without any efficiency. So, um, right, the myth of multitasking, we're not actually getting more done. We're getting more things done less efficiently and slower. So, focus on one thing at a time. That's a hard one for me. It really is. I've tried to slow down. I've tried to recognize when I'm doing it, and it really has helped me. I feel like the urgency of whatever it is that I've got to do right now is false most of the time, right? And it just pushes me into that cortisol driven state, that stress hormone driven state. And then I'm sacrificing my progesterone or my testosterone for cortisol instead of that valuable estrogen that I need, right? That I need to stay balanced and grounded and healthy and keep my tissues vital. So even just that little thing, catching yourself before you're like, let me do this while I'm waiting for this, or let me do this at the same time. Even that can be a huge step in the right direction to replenish and rebalance yourself and your hormones. We want to do maybe a little volunteer work, some selfless service that can get us out of our thinking mind and sort of our sometimes our victimhood. We like to often stay in a place where we feel helpless, I think, because it's all we know sometimes, right? Who would we be without this symptom or without this feeling all the time? And so maybe get out and do a little volunteer work. And then we can also create community, which is, I think, a missing piece in our healing at every age, but especially at this time in our lives when we are undergoing a really important transition into feeling grounded and seated and confident in who we are and what we want our lives to look like. Um, get rid of those toxic relationships, those toxic habits, activities, substances. Let them go as you're ready, but know that you are stronger without them. So if there are things that are weighing you down or depleting your energy and making you feel drained, it's time to let those go. And sometimes those are really hard. So again, give yourself time. We don't change overnight. And if we do, we end up getting more imbalanced, remember? So let go of things as you are ready. Sometimes they go on their own, and sometimes we need to put a little effort into letting them go. So start small, and then the bigger things will seem less daunting if you start to just give away, the little things that are no longer serving you. It could just be how you speak or how you think, right? Or that little voice that tells you to multitask like mine does. It's a good place to start. And then avoid extreme and competitive exercise. Okay, I know Pitta people, this is your jam, but you don't have to prove your worth. You're worthy because you exist. You can exercise without depleting your tissues. You can exercise without, sending your body into a place where you need a hip or a knee replacement. You really can. But I know that's hard. But know that, this is kind of where I see women depleting tissue and lowering body fat, and then increasing symptoms like hot flashes, and because they're just, they're that vata pushing pitta, right? The movement and the intensity is coming in, and they get those symptoms. So balanced hormones means balanced body tissue. We want to make sure we have some fat. Muscle is important, yes, because we want our bone health to be there as well. But when we're in that competitive state, our thyroid tends to get compromised. Our adrenal glands tend to get overtaxed. We're pumping out cortisol, and we're actually harming ourselves instead of helping ourselves. So be careful with the draw of competitive exercise, especially in our 40s and 50s. This is not the time to start doing that. It's really not. But to each their own. I don't want to tell anyone they're wrong. I'm just telling you what's unsupportive and what's supportive. And competitive exercise in our 40s and 50s and beyond is not the answer. And then we want to surround ourselves with nourishing and supportive relationships, fulfilling activities outside of work. So find something other than work to fill your time. Start using your creative side. Get rest, get nourishment. Start slowing down a little bit. We're not stopping anything. We're not we're not discontinuing our activities. We're just approaching life differently and we're doing them differently. Okay. So this isn't about dying. We're certainly not even close to that. This is a great time in our life. We just have to account for the change in our bodies and adapt to it, right? And allow things to happen. Bring in more nourishment, slow down a little bit, change the approach.